Welcome to the next video in the Suggestion app course. This is a complete course where we'll build a .NET 6 Blazor server application with MongoDB from the ground up. There are 3 things you need to know before we get started. First, this is part of a series, and this isn't the first video in the series. If you're just starting out, you should check out the playlist that's linked in the description to start from the first video in the series. Second, this course is actually a paid course. MongoDB sponsored it so you can put the videos on YouTube for free. Check out the link in the description to sign up for MongoDB Atlas for free to thank them if you haven't already. Third, you can also buy this course on imtimcorey.com. The link is in the description. Buying this course will get you all the lessons right away, the source code for each lesson, a certificate of completion, offline access, and more. It also helps sponsor more free content. The video will be the same as it is on YouTube, so feel free to watch the free version if you want to. Okay, let's jump into today's video. Note there may be more than one lesson in this video, since some lessons are short. It's time for the big page. We're going to work on the suggestion page for our site. Now, we could do one of 2 things. We could either call it index and repurpose what we have already, or we could create a new page called Suggestions and then make that the default page. Either would work. In my project, I call it Suggestions, but I can also see how having an index page is clearer in the fact that it tells you this is the root page. So I think we'll create or just use the index page. Just know if you want to create a Suggestions page instead, just right-click on Pages and say Add Razor Component, name it Suggestions, and the key here would be you delete the index page. And then you would make sure that this directive is at the top of your Suggestions page. This one right here tells the system this is the root page. This is the page that is the root of our site. This is the page that will load first. So in our case, I'm going to just use this page as our site. I'm going to wipe everything else out. The page title I'll even wipe out. I don't need it for now. And then I'm going to start injecting some things from Dependency Injection. And this page is going to have a little bit of everything. So category data called category data. We're going to inject status data called status data. We're going to inject suggestion data called suggestion data. And we'll inject the user data called user data. So that's a lot of dependency injection work, but this page has a lot going on one page. It's really the hub of everything we'll be doing. In fact, this is the page that people will most likely use the most, stay on the most, and work with the most. So this is the thing that has basically everything displayed at once. Now we have 2 more injections we want to talk about. The first one is Navigation Manager. We'll call this Nav Manager. This will allow us to go between pages. So when we say, hey, I want the details for the suggestion, when they click on that, we can navigate to the details page. That's what the navigation is for. And then the last one, Protected Session Storage. And the control dot here says, hey, you need to have the using for this right here. Microsoft.asp.core.components.server.protected-browser-storage. Or what we can do is we can add this using in our imports. Like so. And then that makes it a lot easier. We don't have to have it on this page. And this is called session storage. Now, what is protected session storage? If you are familiar with JavaScript at all, we have the ability to store in local storage or session storage very easily. This is going to store in session storage. We can also do local storage if we wanted to. It'd be protected local storage. In this case, I want to do session storage because when the user logs in, I want them to have access to their filters. So we have the ability, if you go back and look at the document we created with the layout of this page, we have the ability to search. In that search box, we have the ability to select a category or select a status or both, and then sort by popular or new. Well, I want to be able to save those settings so we can go to a new page and then come back to this main page. Those settings haven't gone away. Otherwise, it'd be very frustrating. You dial in exactly what you want to see, and you see 5 different suggestions. You click on the first suggestion, look at it, go, yep, that's not what I was looking for, and go back, and now you have to dial those settings back in order to get back to those 5. So this way, it'll go back and it'll have the same list you had before. That's what we use session storage for. So those are all of the elements for our dependency injection. Now, this page has a lot going on, like I said. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk you through building this page out. We're going to concentrate in this session just on the content of the page. When you are building up an app, it's tempting to focus on the design of the page as you go. But I'd encourage you, if you can, get away from that. Because as you're building a web page, what happens is you start dialing in your design, and then you go, oh, I need to add this content, and that changes everything. And now you have to go back and change your design again, and maybe remove some things out of your design, change your CSS, and then you do that, and then you go back to the page and go, oh, I need this content, and now you change your CSS again. Not ideal. Instead, what we're going to do is we're going to put all the content on the page. It will look horrible, but we'll get all the content there. Then, in a future lesson, we'll work on styling the content to lay out properly, look great, and have some more interactivity that comes with applying styles. So for now, let's do this. Let's add a code section. And yes, there is no HTML right now. So we have injections right to our code. That's okay. And yes, I am going to put the code right on the page. This is something that I love about Blazor, is that we can put the code right on the page, but I don't keep it there permanently. I do for development, I do for testing things out, because it's right next to my HTML, and there's no switching that has to happen between pages. However, once we are done, it's very easy now to say control dot and say extract block to code behind. And this will create a code behind class for us that will be right behind our index.razor, and this will have just our code in it. So it separates out the HTML and the CSS or C# from each other. That way, we have this nice separation. It's very easy, and at the same time, it's easy for development purposes as well. So we'll develop on page, and then we'll split out later. So I'm going to go through the things that we're going to need for this page. We're going to need a list of suggestion model called suggestions. We're going to need a list of category model called categories. And we're going to need a list of status model called statuses. So those are our data points. We're also going to need to know who the logged in user is, but we haven't dealt with authentication yet, so we'll leave that one alone for now. Now, we're also going to have some filter settings. So let's set up those. Private string selected category. And we'll start with a category of all as the default. Private string selected status. Again, all is the default. Private string search text equals nothing by default. Bool is sorted by new equals true. So by default, we're going to sort by the newest entries. And that will be it for our variables at the top. These are the variables we use for displaying and setting up entries in our HTML. Now I'm starting with working the initialization, the setup, because of the fact that I need to have some data here before I then concentrate on putting the code up top, because with no data, I can't see if it's working or not. Now let's create our OnInitializedAsync method. Actually, let's make it just printed override. OnInitializedAsync. Well, that didn't work. Let's try it again. Well, we'll do it ourselves. Printed override task OnInitializedAsync. There we go. We mark it async. And now we can put in here two different calls. First of all, categories equals await category data dot get all categories. Remember, this is cached. So after the first call, it will cache this and get it back almost immediately. And then statuses equals await status data get all statuses. So that takes care of our loading data. And now we need to worry about how do we load up all the suggestions. So to do that, we actually have I have a couple of methods we're going to create in just a minute, but I'll call them first so you can see those methods are. So we have a protected override on OnAfterRenderAsync, like so. This is not auto-completing for some reason. So task OnAfterRenderAsync. And it has a bool of first render being passed in. It'll mark this as async override, and then we'll give it our curly braces. And what this does is it will run after the page is rendered. Now the page gets rendered twice in our scenario because of the fact we go to program.cs and we look in here, we're going to see, actually, nope, it's in register services. We have, nope, it's not. They move things around. It's not their problem, it's my problem. It's in here somewhere. Here we go, under hosts. I lost it. So server pre-rendered. So what this does is it pre-renders our Blazor server project on the server so that we can transmit the rendered page, and then it re-renders the page locally so that we can have everything wired up. And the benefit here is it speeds up how fast the user sees something on the page that looks usable. So it looks usable first, and then it is usable once it loads in the background on the client side. Now, some people don't like this because of the fact it does do a data call twice if you are loading things on the OnInitializedAsync or on the OnAfterRenderAsync, because of the fact those get called twice. But what we're going to do is we're going to use this first render boolean to help out with some of that. So if first render, then we're going to do two things. We're going to await LoadFilterState, which we have not created yet, and of course it overwrites that. LoadFilterState. You have to escape to get rid of IntelliSense there. So LoadFilterState, and we're also going to await a FilterSuggestions, like so. And then these two methods, what they'll do is they'll render the first time. So the first time this page gets rendered, we're going to load the filter state and filter the suggestions. Then after that, because this is done in the OnAfterRenderAsync, we need to then say state has changed. Now we put this in the first render because then the state has changed, which means it's going to render again. We wouldn't want to get caught in a loop. So we just do it on the first render of the page. So this tells Blazor, hey, go ahead and update the page because the state has changed for the page. Normally you don't have to do this, but because we're in this OnAfterRenderAsync method, we do. Now, why did I put this here instead of OnInitializedAsync? And the answer is because the filter state is going to get information from the session state, that's the session storage, from the user's browser. Well, that's not going to be available to us in OnInitializedAsync. It's only available to us after the render because it uses JavaScript interop. So therefore, we cannot put it in this OnInitializedAsync. We have to wait until after the page is rendered. So with that, we need to now create this LoadFilterState method. Private async task LoadFilterState. So now what we can do is this method is going to get called first. We'll load the filter state, and then we can do the same thing down here and stub it out for now. Private async. Notice everything is private here. We rarely have anything be public in our Blazor pages. The only thing that'll be public is the parameter stuff. We haven't dealt with any parameters yet. So filter suggestions, like so. And now we have our two methods that we're going to call on after first render async. Let's start with the load filter state. So let's get the filter state from our storage, which, by the way, what we're going to do is we're going to load these right here. Select a category, select a status, search text, and is sorted by new. So what I'm going to do is a little kind of a trick here. So var string results equals await session storage dot get async. I want a string, and I have to give this a name. Now I could give this some type of name like, this will be the category information. So I could say category like this, and this would be the key that we then use to look up the value. But then I have all these strings in there that, why am I storing these string names? Instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say name of selected category. That's the variable it's going to go into. So I'm going to say use this name, so the key will be selected category, the string. But because we're using name of in the variable, then if we change the variable name, it's going to change the key of our session storage. Now, in case you're not aware, session storage only lasts as long as the browser session does. So if you close out of the browser, then that session storage goes away. So it's not like we're having any long-term storage here. So selected category equals string results dot success question mark. So I'm going to do an inline if statement here. I rarely do these, but this is going to cut down on the amount of code we have. So this is going to be the thing to evaluate. Is it success? That's a Boolean. So if it is, that's the question mark in the first value, string results dot value. Otherwise, that's the colon, we're going to say all. So this is how we fill in this category. It's either going to be the value of whatever was in the cache, which right now the first time will be nothing. Therefore, it's not going to find it. So success will be false. Therefore, it's going to return all for the category. But if it finds it, it's going to put that value in instead. So that's how we're going to do the lookup for all of these. So let's just copy and paste. We're not going to copy the var, but string results on down. And this time, instead of selected category, it's selected status. And we'll say selected status is equal to the value or all. Again, selected status as default is going to be all. We'll do it one more time, actually two more times. This time it's going to be search text, and that will be the value we store in, but the default is not going to be all, it's going to be an empty string. So one more time here, so let's copy this and paste, and this time it's going to be is sorted by new, but this is a Boolean. So we're going to get the is sorted by new, which I believe, yes, we have that. Okay, just making sure. So we're going to do and this is the, we have to do a var bool results. And then we're going to capture that information because this is going to be a different type. Notice it's actually protected browser storage result of type bool is the result. That's why I said var, because it makes it easier. It's not a Boolean. These are bool results because again, we capture is it successful? And if so, here's the value, which by the way, should be is sorted by new. So now, and the default here is going to be true. Yes, I probably should have not copied and pasted that one. So we have here is our getAsync of type bool for the is sorted by new flag. And that value goes in here. We check to see if it's successful. If it was, return the value, which is a Boolean. Otherwise, we return the default of true. This now loads our filter state for us. This populates these 4 values. These are the values we're going to use for our filtering. We have selected category, selected status. Those are the 2 lists on the right-hand side. We have a search text, which is that little box where we can search our suggestions. And we have that sorted by new or popular. And since that's a one or the other, it's a Boolean, and is sorted by new is what we're going to use to name that. So that's our load filter state. That's what's going to happen after our render. Now we also have the filter suggestions. So we need to create that list. So let's come down here to our method and say var output equals await suggestion data dot get all approved suggestions. Remember that this page is only going to show us approved suggestions, not all of them, just the ones that we're allowed to see as users. If selected category is not equal to all, output equals output.where. This is where we start doing the filtering. S arrow S dot category, if it has one, category, dot category name. So we're going to say, okay, we're going to filter on the category name if it has one equals selected category. It's going to do a string match on those 2. And then we'll do a to list. So what we've done here is we have done a filter on our list where we said, hey, if it's not equal to all categories, then I want you to find in the output, which is the output's all approved suggestions. I want you to filter that down by the where clause where it says, hey, let's find only the category names that match the given category name. So it's not going to match if category is null, and it's not going to match if the category name is not whatever selected category is. Now, if it's all, we're not going to do this filter at all because we want all categories. Next up, we're going to do the same exact thing. Let's unpin this so we have a little more space. If selected status does not equal all, output equals output dot where s arrow s dot suggestion status, if it's not null, dot status name equals selected status to list. Now, you may have noticed we're doing string comparisons on all, which is the correct capitalization. You may say, hey, that's a little scary. Or we're doing the check the status name based upon whatever is selected. You may say, well, that's string comparison. That's a little dangerous. And it could be, except for the fact that we control all of these things. These are not things the user creates or generates. So we control the casing, we control the strings. We don't have to do the to lower and call extra methods for something that we really don't need to. It's extra calls for no reason. So since this is a controlled environment, we're going to go through this list like so. If we were to mess up somehow, and it'd be very, very hard to mess this up actually, but if we were, then we would not have the correct filter on our list. It'd be very, very obvious that there's a problem. So I'm not going to worry about this for version 1. In fact, I will probably leave this forever. I don't see this as a problem since we control everything. But if we find down the road that for some reason this causes a problem, we could address it and try and make it a little bit more clean, or, create some kind of object comparison or something like that. But we don't need to, because of the fact that this works, we control it, and it's a closed system. So this is actually probably the most efficient way we can go about doing this comparison. With that being said, if you want to write 30 lines to replace this, you could do that, but where's the value? That's, I guess, the place where I land. This is very, very simple, and it works well. All right, if the next thing is for the search text, string.is null or white space, search text equals false. So if there is some kind of text inside the search text, then what we're going to do is say output equals output dot where, and then we'll have a bunch of stuff here, and actually going to probably wrap in a couple different lines, but we'll start with the s equals s dot suggestion dot contains search text, comma string comparison dot invariant culture ignore case. So this is a lot to put in one line. In fact, let's put this on the next line down just so you can see it, and we'll move that down one line. So what this is going to do is say, hey, does this contain, so is this suggestion text, which is the actual suggestion itself, does it contain this text? And by the way, we're doing a comparison where we're ignoring casing. Don't care about that. We just want to know, does one contain the other as far as the actual letters go? And that will help us do our filter. So at the end of this has to be a dot to list. That's why it's yelling at us. So that will search the actual suggestions, but what if you put text in the description that would be searchable as well? Well, we could say or, that's 2 pipe characters. And then down here we can say s.description.contains search text string comparison dot invariant culture ignore case, like so. So now we're searching both the suggestion itself as well as description to see if we have a match on our search text. Now, this is a very, very simple search algorithm. We're not doing anything complex like fuzzy matching or anything else. Maybe in the future that might be valuable, but I really don't think so. I don't think we need to get that complicated because of the fact that it's a whole lot of extra work, and we probably have to implement a third-party library in order to do it. And is it really going to add a whole lot of value here? I don't think so. But again, this is a place where down the road, we might decide, hey, let's make this an improvement. And this is where we do it. Now, if we decide to do that, that will not be a version 1 thing. That'll definitely be a version 1.1 or beyond. So what I would do is, if I thought that we really need to upgrade this search, again, I don't think so, but if we did, then I would put this on my future updates list. Remember that list? We want to keep maintaining that list and say, hey, here's the cool stuff we want to do, but we're not going to do for version 1. And that might go on that list. Don't just put stuff on there to put stuff on there, though. Make sure that you're thinking through, is that really necessary? Or maybe you have a third list that's like possible ideas, and you put it there. So with that, that gives us our third filter, which is based upon search text. Now we have one more, and that's the ordering. So if is sorted by new, output equals output dot order by descending, and let's order this by date created, like so. Else, and we're going to say output equals output dot order by descending, and we'll order by s.uservotes.count. So this is since it's not ordered by new, it's ordered by popular. We're going to deem popularity based upon the number of votes for something. But we don't want to stop at the number of votes, because the fact that could, if you have 8 things that have 5 votes each, which one do you order by inside those 5? So there's 8 elements that each have 5 votes. Which one goes first? Well, when I have a secondary sort criteria, and so let's order by, let's actually tab in here a little bit. Order by descending and, not order by descending, then descending. And we'll say s.date created. So we'll order by the date created, and that's it. I think that's good enough to list, like so. So in this way, we're going to have the order by the user votes and then by date created. That way, if there's more than one at a certain vote count, we are ordering by when they were created. Okay, so that gives us our ordering. Now we can say down here is suggestions equals output. So we have now filtered all of our suggestions, and we have filled up the suggestion list with that filtered set. That way, we now have a list that respects our different filters. Now, the last thing we need to do is something we haven't created yet. Await SaveFilterState. So we haven't saved the state yet of our filters. We need to do that once we load in our suggestions, once we filter by them. Therefore, let's create that method. So we have up here the LoadFilterState. Let's put it right after. Order does not matter here, but I like to keep things close if I can. Private async task, SaveFilterState. Like so, and that should make this error go away. It does. So now in the SaveFilterState, we have an easier job. Up here, we had to check to see if it was available or not. Here, we just say await session storage dot set async, name of selected category, and then selected category. So this is the key, this is the value. And we're doing that for all four. So let's just paste them down. And this is selected status. And we'll copy that over. This next one is search text. And this next one is sorted by new. So we'll copy those over. So that's all there is to saving the filters. So now we know the filters will be saved every time we do a filter suggestions. Now, so far, let's collapse these down here. So far, we have the load the filter state when we render the page the first time, but we're going to call this load filter state and other times as well. So we'll make sure that we load the state at that time. Also, we're going to filter the suggestions multiple times. Whenever we change the filter status, we'll just call filter suggestions. It will filter the suggestions and then save that state. So we always have the correct state for our filters. Now that we have our filters loading and saving and we can filter our suggestions, let's go ahead and create a few more methods that'll be helper methods that we'll use up in our actual HTML. So the first one's going to be the order by new. So private async task order by new, and we'll say is new. And what that's going to do is this is being called whenever you click on the value for the toggle. So if you toggle the popular or new, that will toggle what the filter is for this is sorted by new. So we're going to say is sorted by new equals is new. And you may think, well, why couldn't you just do this directly in your HTML above? Well, because we want a second line of code here, and that is await filter suggestions. And what this will do is now that you've changed the ordering, we want to go ahead and run that filter again. And that filter, remember, is going to get all approved suggestions, which should be cached, and then it's going to do the filtering on those. And then finally, it's going to put the results into the suggestions list and save the filter state. So all that will happen whenever you change the toggle from new to popular or from popular to new. Now we also have that search input. So private async task on search input, string search input, and we'll call this pretty regularly whenever a person types in the search field. There won't be a button. There'll just be they type in, it will start filtering immediately. So search text equals search input. Pretty straightforward. And then you probably guessed it, await filter suggestions. So that's all it's going to take to do our search input. Let's move on down to two more. Private async task on category click. String category equals all. That's the default. It's nice to have a default value because then we don't have to pass in a value for everything. We can just say, hey, if it's the all, just call OnCategoryClick. Selected category equals category. Then we're going to say await filter suggestions. And one more, you can probably type it on your own, but if we're going to do it together, private, maybe pause the video. Private async task on suggestion click string, I'm sorry, not suggestion, status. I get those two mixed up a lot. It caused a little bit of a problem when I was doing my initial build. String status equals all. And selected status equals status. Await filter suggestions. Now again, I'm not doing logging, but these might be places where I'd put some logging in place just to say, hey, this is what has changed, this is what happened. And it'd probably be not a logging we do all the time, but more of if we're having problems, I'd make this logging show up. So it'd be more like a debug or an info logging rather than a warning or an error. So just kind of track what the user's doing. That's what I'd do with these different methods. They can see what's happening and know why we're filtering suggestions again. Okay, that's really all of the big stuff. There is a couple of small things that I think we're going to wait to do until after we get some stuff on the page. So let's leave it like this, and we're going to say that that's all the code we need to start putting text on the page. From there, we will write a couple of methods. In fact, you know what? Let's just do it now because we're already on the methods, and we'll just have them, but not need them until a little bit later. So the first one is private string GetUpvoteTopText. We're going to pass in the suggestion model suggestion. So what's going to happen is if you look back at your document, our design document, we have the idea of the upvotes on the left-hand side of each element. And some will say click to upvote because there's been no votes yet. And others will say, hey, here is the number of upvotes already, and then you can, click to add your own. So we need to choose what to display there, either click to at the top or the number of votes. In order to do that, we need to know which suggestion we're working on because there's a list of them. So if suggestion.userVotes, and if there's even is one, even is a set of them, count is greater than 0. So if there are any votes at all, if there is, then return suggestion.userVotes.count.toString, and we're going to say that the format is 00. What that will do is if you have one vote, it will say 01 like that. And if you have 10 votes, it'll say 10, or 11 votes, 11, 11. But that way, you always have at least 2 digits. Because I found in my testing that 1 digit was just so tiny and minuscule and not easy to see that it didn't look great. So we're going to make sure we always have 2 digits. So I have a leading 0. So else, if you have no votes, then we're going to say return click to. That's going to say click to upvote. So that'll be our method for getting the top text of that little box. And then we're going to have one more, and that is the bottom text. Private string GetUpvoteButtomText. Suggestion model. Suggestion. And then in here, we're going to say if suggestion.userVotes, if there is any, .count is greater than 1. We're going to say return upvotes. Else return upvote. Now, there's 2 purposes for this method. The first one is, hey, if you only have 1 vote, it shouldn't say 01 upvote or upvotes. So it should probably say 1 upvote because it's singular, whereas upvotes is plural. So therefore, if you have more than 1 upvote, then it's upvotes plural. Otherwise, it's singular. However, if there are no upvotes, we're going to say click to at the top, and we don't want to say click to upvotes. We want to say click to upvote. Therefore, that's going to match up because there's not even upvotes listed or there's 0 upvotes. Either way, we're going to have click to upvote. So that just makes things a little easier on us. It clarifies how things are going to get displayed. We don't have to have this kind of logic inside of our HTML. We can just call this method and say, hey, just show me the text for this suggestion. So there's a couple of helper methods that will make life easy. The last method that we need is private void OpenDetails suggestion model. And what this will do is we don't have this page yet, but when you click on a suggestion, we want to open a details page for that suggestion. So nav manager.navigate to, and we'll put this be string interpolation, so a $sign outside of it, /details, that'll be the name of the page, /suggestion.id. So the complete path of our details page will include the unique identifier for a suggestion. That will allow us to load that specific suggestion on a page, and if you bookmark that page, it will be able to reload that page directly because it knows what the suggestion ID is that you're looking up. So that's what this OpenDetails will do. They'll create for us the proper link and navigate to that page. Okay, so that's all of the helper methods. I debated doing these last two because I don't want to do too much that's outside of context, but I think we're going to see this very quickly, how to use this when we get up here and start writing our HTML code. It is a lot of C#, and some of this maybe can be moved off into a class library if we really thought it was necessary. However, everything related to the user interface really needs to be in the user interface layer. Even if you put in a class library, what's the benefit? If you're only going to use it for one user interface, it doesn't need to be in a library. It needs to be closest to where it's going to be used. So we're going to put it right in the page for now. Maybe in the future, I would take some of this and abstract it away into a couple of helper classes or something like that. But really, this is doing everything I want it to do for the UI page. Therefore, I'm going to keep it right where it's at. Once we're done with these pages, and not before, but once we're done, we're going to come up here to code, hit Control Dot, and extract the code to a code behind file. But not until we're done. I find it much easier to have it all on one page. So that will cut down on the amount of lines of code in one file. So with that, let's stop this lesson right here, and we'll come back in the next lesson where we'll do the HTML for this page.